Okay, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today from near and far. My name is Maria Derlipanska. I'm a Senior Associate Director of Admission at the Yale School of Management, and I sit on the admissions team. We hope that this webinar, today's event, will help you learn more about the Silva Scholars Program, the Yale School of Management more generally, the curriculum, our community, and of course the application process. We're also hoping to be able to answer all of your questions. And with that in mind, starting now, I would like to encourage you to begin submitting your questions through the Q&A feature of this platform. I'll be keeping a very close eye on the Q&A, fielding your questions, and either passing them on to our panelists if they're more related to the student life experience, the curriculum, the community, etc. Or I'll be answering them myself if they are more on the subject of admissions, the application process, the different components of the application, and so on. So at this point, I would like to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. We have a great panel for you today that is comprised of both current students and alumni. And we have current students that are in residence taking courses, as well as current students that are now on their extended internship. Our alumni are actually very recent alumni. So again, if you have any questions for them about their experience with the curriculum, the community, you can address those to them as well. I'll just kind of call out your names as I see the order in which you appear on my screen, and we'll begin with Dan.
Alrighty, hey everybody, my name is Dan. I'm a SOM Silver Scholar class of 2016 alum. I am presently in Santa Clara, California, so in Silicon Valley. I am originally from Indiana. I studied at a small Quaker liberal arts school called Haverford outside of Philadelphia. And presently I am a senior product manager at Glassdoor.
Thank you so much. Ben, would you mind adding also a little bit about your thought process as a college senior, why you decided to pursue an MBA immediately after college? I'm sure that all the seniors that are tuning in are kind of interested to hear from each and every one of you what you were thinking in your final year of college and why you decided to make that choice.
Yeah, no, great question. So for me, I definitely knew that I wanted to pivot from originally my plan was to go to law school. This was a little bit after the Great Recession, and so the market for law jobs was pretty weak. I felt that I wanted to kind of pursue my other passion, which was product management and tech. Fortunately, it really worked out because the Silver Scholars Program allowed me to recruit into a internship in product management at a legal tech company at LegalZoom.com. So that was really great. But then it also really helped me prepare and gain the important skills that I continue to use to this day as a product manager, all the business fundamentals and frameworks. So it just really worked out, and I have no regrets.
Great, thank you so much. So next, Hannah.
Hey everyone, my name is Hannah Webb, and I'm not an alumni yet. I still have yet to return to the school, so sort of been somewhat procrastinating that. And a little bit of my background. So I'm actually from Georgia, so I went to a state school undergrad, fairly traditional finance background. And the reason I actually went to Yale was more because I was looking for a career boost. In a selfish manner, I definitely took a very practical view of having Yale on your resume is always nice to start a conversation, and I thought it was a way to basically start networking with people who I otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to do so. So I went directly in. I actually had about 6 months of working for Deloitte Consulting before I actually went to Yale, just because I graduated in the winter. So had a few months of experience and went into Yale, completed my first year. And since then I've done a couple of different things. So as Maria knows, bounced around a little bit, which has been really fun. So I first went back to Deloitte for 1 year, which is really cool because they gave me a promotion to the consultant. So I went from analyst to consultant. And then after completing my 1 year with them, I was actually going to go back to school, but I was really pleased to get an offer over at Citibank. So I ended up as a vice president and product manager over there, where I led the market launch of 2 of their digital products, which was really cool. And once again, I was going to go back to school with the best of intentions, but ended up getting offered the job of the CEO of a startup, which is where I currently am. And so I'm leading that startup and have been here since May. So almost 6 months at this new company, which has definitely been an incredible learning opportunity. It's been total chaos, as I think most startups are, but it's been a really, really cool opportunity. And I actually met this company that I'm with right now through a Yale connection. So that was really cool and had a great opportunity there. So yeah, I promise I will get back to the school at some point. So as of right now, planning to go back in the spring. Yeah, and looking forward to connecting with everyone today.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Next, we have Johan.
Hey everyone, my name is Johan. Originally from Germany, from the south of Germany. I'm not sure how we define classes again, but I basically graduated in 2018. I took 1 gap year, so 1 full year. Essentially, spent 3 years doing my MBA. For me, it was pretty clear from the beginning that I wanted to come in, kind of coming from Germany, from a rotational program that I did over there with a company called Siemens, like a large engineering firm, to really come in and just look around and see what else is out there, and kind of jump essentially over a couple of steps here by exposing myself to, again, I think as Hannah mentioned, like people that he can network with that he would otherwise not meet, and kind of get exposure to industries that I just didn't know about. For me, I really wanted to do investment banking or anything in the finance world, and kind of really got that exposure there. I had the chance to use my gap year, which I was pretty firm on. I wanted to do 1 year, to use that for 2 internships in the finance industry, and both of them would have converted. One of them I wanted to take on. So I kind of essentially took that return offer and went back to the firm that I interned with, which is a middle market M&A advisory firm here in Chicago, called William Blair. And I'm here now about 2.5 years now in the investment banking team.
Great, thank you. Next, we have Akshat.
Hey everyone, I'm Akshat. I'm a part of the class of 2022. So, I mean, to make it easier, the 2019 intake. I'm currently in Mumbai, which is where I've been sort of born and brought up. I went to school back here in India. I did a bachelor's in economics from NMIMS. And yeah, I think for me, the biggest reason that I wanted to do business school right out of undergrad, like a lot of them mentioned, is A, just the network opportunity, getting to meet people that you would not have ever been able to meet otherwise. And B, just the fact that it's such an accelerated program, but also you have flexibility. So you get to choose when you sort of exit and enter. And it's become pretty evident that that's super important right now. So, those are the 2 big reasons that I kind of chose Yale. And obviously having Yale on your resume is a big plus point as well. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm currently in my gap year working, and yeah, super excited to go back at some point.
Great, thank you, Akshat. And last but not least, we have Jinyao.
Hi everyone, I'm Jinyao. I'm originally from Beijing, China. I went to Wellesley College and studied economics. I'm currently a 2nd year Silva Scholar at SOM. I'm actually moving to New Haven right now before fall 2 starts on Monday. In terms of my decision to apply to the program, I resonate with a lot of the reasons other people mentioned. The main reason for me was I wanted to figure out what I really wanted to do with my career, and I think SOM helped me come to that conclusion much faster than the other ways. I actually postponed my Silver Scholar offer and worked in economic consulting for a year right after undergrad. But even then, I knew it was good to do it for a year or 2 to gain some skills, but it wasn't where I was headed in the long term. I think coming to SOM, I'd get exposure to different academic fields within business. I'd meet so many hundreds of classmates, all with very different professional and academic backgrounds and aspirations, not to mention the wealth of alum network and professors. So I knew that would help me, just realize what's out there professionally that I can apply myself to, that I can really be excited about much faster than if I were to do a new grad job for 3 to 5 years and just try to network when I get home from work. So that's the main reason.
Great, thank you so much. So I see that we already have quite a few questions, but before we get to your questions, I wanted to say a few words about the Silva Scholars Program, just to kind of pinpoint a few of the really differentiating features of the program, and I think that will address quite a few of the inquiries that we have received. So for those of you that have begun researching business schools that take applications from college seniors, may have noticed that many of the programs that do accept applications from college seniors accept them in so-called 2+2 or deferment programs, right? So they do admit you into the program as a college senior, but the expectation is that you work for a few years before you actually join their full-time MBA program. So this is the first thing that is very, very unique about the Silva Scholars Program. We actually enroll you in our full-time MBA program straight out of college. So you graduate in May or June, and you matriculate into the program that very same August. You're part of the incoming MBA class, okay? Now, that said, I really want to emphasize that it's the exact same 2-year full-time MBA program that all of our students complete, Silva Scholars and young professionals with 2+ years of work experience, okay? The only difference is what happens between the first and the final year of the MBA program. So obviously young professionals with several years of work experience complete a summer internship, and Silva Scholars, because they come into the program with no full-time work experience, complete, for lack of a better word, an extended internship, but essentially they work full-time for a year between the first and the final year of the MBA program. Now, I think it's become already very, very obvious from what you've heard on the panel that we're very flexible about what that extended internship looks like, right? Yes, the requirement is that you work full-time for a year, but you may take longer than a year as you find new opportunities, want to do other things before you return to finish your MBA, and you may want to take advantage of those opportunities. You may stay out for 2 or 3 years. Others have chosen to split their internship year between 2 or more internships, right? Not necessarily in the same place, at the same company, in the same role, or in the same geography, okay? So I really, really wanted to emphasize how flexible we are about what your extended internship looks like. Another point that I wanted to make is that we accept students from all majors, okay? I think there might be sort of a view out there that business schools prefer economics and finance majors. Yes, we have those as well, but it's not that we have a preference for them. We really do try to recruit a class that is very diverse, academically, professionally, experientially, geographically, and so on. So I have a list here of a few majors of Silva Scholars that entered the program this fall of 2020, and I wanted to read them out to you. Anthropology, applied mathematics, biomedical engineering, business administration, chemical engineering, computer science, economics, finance, German language and literature, hospitality management, international relations, political science and government, statistics, okay? And again, this is just a selection. This is not the full list of majors of Silva Scholars that entered the class this year, okay? So I really, really hope that that gives you confidence that we do like to receive applications across different academic disciplines. The final thing that I wanted to say is that you may have heard that along with the MBA, you can pursue another graduate program at Yale University. So we have 10 joint degree programs, and of course, Silva Scholars are absolutely welcome to apply to any and all of them, okay? One is actually a joint degree with another program that we have at the Yale School of Management. It's a brand new program, a master's in asset management. And the other 9 programs are part of the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences or other professional school CTLs such as law, medicine, architecture, drama, divinity, public health, school of the environment. One is with the Jackson Institute for Global Affairs, and the 9th isn't really a single degree, but all the PhD programs at Yale University. So you can pursue an MBA along with a PhD. So these are the main points that I really wanted to make. I have a few questions for the panel, if you don't mind, before we begin answering questions straight from the Q&A. So my first question was, if you can talk a little bit about what student clubs you are or were a part of, and tell us also a little bit about Yale SOM culture, how that played into your decision to apply to the Silva Scholars Program, and how it's supporting you academically and professionally.
I can kick it off. So hey everybody again, Dan, class of 2016. Gosh, so during my time at SOM, I was one of the co-leaders of the technology club. And so at SOM, we have a number of different types of clubs, including affinity groups, social clubs, as well as professional clubs. The professional clubs are really focused on helping you prepare for recruiting, and I knew that I wanted to recruit into technology. I came from a distinctly non-quantitative, non-technical background. I studied urban studies in undergrad, so I knew that I was going to perhaps need a little bit more prep and a little bit more help. So I wanted to get really involved in that, and was fortunate to be able to join the tech club as a first-year leader, kind of managing a lot of our events in our newsletter, and then as a second year, kind of more around like general planning of the club and kind of helping out the first years. And I found it an incredible experience. I really enjoyed, particularly as a second year, being able to sort of pay all of the learnings that I had gained forward. That also sort of translated into some of my experiences as a career coach, like a peer career coach in our career development office. So that was also really rewarding, meeting with first years and other second years and other folks in other degree programs. So that was really wonderful. I think for me, one of the primary factors of why SOM was my #1 choice, beyond the fact that I wanted to get an MBA immediately after undergrad. I didn't want to defer and spend like Jinyao said, a couple of years in an entry-level role. Beyond that, I really wanted to find a strong network, as a couple of other folks mentioned that. And I really found that in both the Silva Scholars Program as well as in SOM. So the community is exceptionally like tight-knit. I think that's it's hard to put a metric to that, but I think that it's partially demonstrated in the fact that over half of all living alumni from SOM all contribute back to the school every single year, whether it's in a financial donation or helping out as like an alumni volunteer. And so that community was really what drew me. All the folks who I reached out to when I was applying were very, very generous with their time, always answered their emails, and that was a consistent experience while I was a student and since I have become an alum. So that was really sort of the differentiator. I think at the end of the day, I might not remember how to compute the weighted average cost of capital or run a DCF, discounted cash flow off the top of my head, but I definitely know that one thing that I use day after day is the network of friends and classmates that I've developed at SOM.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can just add to that. Maybe this is Johan again. What my personal impressions were. So when I was there, I was part of the founding team of the European Club, which is more of a regional club, obviously. which was very interesting. And I think that kind of adds to Dan's point. Like there's a bunch of clubs that you can join that are already there. In our case, we just said there's a club that doesn't exist, so we said let's just try and see if we can found it. And from my latest knowledge, it's still around. It was simply an interesting experience. Obviously, not just saying you were part of club, but you said you could contribute something to the school that might stick around for a couple of years. And it was an interesting experience, kind of going through essentially all the logistics and everything, all the programming, trying to come up with a schedule and agenda of things. And not just doing that for us, but also for others. Like our main goal was, as a very small community of Europeans at SOM, to really say, let's just see if we can introduce somebody to our culture, and kind of not just our culture, but our cultures, because there's just so many different countries. And even if you have in your class, like one Italian, one French, one German, and you could always try to pull something together and say, let's do something as kind of to show other folks what Europe is about. So that was just an interesting nuance, I think, in addition to what's already there, that you can even come in and say, what's not there, let me try to create it. I think, which is a nice option that SOM obviously gives you.
Thank you.
I mean, I can add a little bit to that. For me, I was a part of the South Asia clubs, as well as pretty actively involved in the PE, VC, and the investment management clubs. And I think for me, one of the biggest value additions was just the amount of I don't know how to put this, the amount of professional work that they would do in terms of just preparing you for the industry. So I've been actively using a lot of the guides that the clubs have given me, even in my current job, just to brush up on my skills a little bit. And they would do a bunch of treks to New York and Boston and stuff like and places like that, to just meet the firms that you might be working with. And I found those to be immensely helpful. So like I do I do really enjoy it. I have really enjoyed and will continue to enjoy like the club experience of SOM. But I think for me, the biggest value addition also of the network was just how nice the alumni network is. My current, the internship that I currently have is because I cold emailed the CEO of the firm that I'm working with, and he was an SOM alumni. He just kind of called me to his office and we chatted for like an hour. And I think that was just an example of just how involved the alumni network can be and how useful that is at every stage of your life.
Thank you.
I can add to that. So when I was and when I'm currently at SOM, I've also been pretty involved with the professional clubs, depending on what I was recruiting for. So first year consulting club, and then now tech club. And both times I've just been really amazed by literally the curriculums that the club leaders have designed to really handhold you through every single step, from exactly where you are, knowing nothing, to getting the offers. They really the second years put in so much effort to really lead you through and help you to get from where you are to where they got to. So coming from, undergrad, where there really wasn't that much help, I had to figure out everything on my own. It was just mind-blowing how much professional guidance there is. And in terms of the culture, I think what for me, what really sets SOM apart from other business schools, at least from what I've heard, is just the culture of giving back. When I was a first year, the second years, they were so approachable and they really went the extra mile to help me a lot of times. I'm a second year now, and I still experience that a lot. Like recently, I've been interviewing a lot and like trying to get classmates to mock interview me. Just this past weekend, I asked someone that I've never even met to mock interview me, to like book 30 minutes of his time. And he was like, oh, like tell me more about your interview. And when he realized it was a final round, he was like, let's do an hour and 15 minutes so I can give you a more comprehensive interview. And that's just like a very small example of how people are really genuinely so nice and really root for your success and go the extra mile to help you get there.
Thank you. Great. So you already touched on this, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about career resources, which I'm sure many of the students listening would be interested in. What is our career development office like? What specific resources are available to Silva scholars? And again, I know that we already talked a little bit about that, but would anyone like to share what you in particular found most helpful? Obviously, Jinyao just talked about the professional student clubs. They do a tremendous amount of work. And of course, they work in very, very close collaboration with the Career Development Office. Anything else that you can think of that has helped you along the way related to career resources?
Yeah, I mean, I can jump on this again. For me, the two biggest things were the alumni directory, like just the alumni network that we have, and also the CDO coaches. I remember because like when I had started out, I wasn't fully sure that I wanted to go into private equity directly. I was kind of, hopping between investment banking, consulting, PE, where do I want to end up? And the CDO coaches just really helped me structure out what I want to do with my career and like how I want to get there, and just kind of make a plan of like, okay, whom should I get in touch with? And I was literally, emailing like 10 alumni every week just to set up meetings in New York. Another thing is that we're so close to New York that that's possible. I was emailing like just I would go to the CDO coaches and get like a list of people that I should talk to. I would email those people, and this was like a weekly thing. And then I would go to New York on Friday, try to get as many meetings in, and then come back to New Haven by Monday. And it was just the same thing again. But I found that to be super useful because like just the amount of involvement from the CDO coaches really helps you just like really structure out and figure out where it is that you want to go and how to get there in the best way.
Great, thank you.
I can jump in on that. So I think what's fantastic and phenomenal about the Silver Scholars Program and about Yale overall is that one of SOM's goals is to become the most integrated business school with its parent university. And I think to that extent, we're in a very fortunate position where we're able to not just tap into the exceptionally tightly knit alumni community of the Silver Scholars and of SOM, but also the greater Yale University network. And so that opens up to hundreds of thousands of alum who have also gone to different graduate schools, or have gone to different undergrads, but this enables you to connect and network with them. So for instance, I was able to find my internship, which eventually turned into my full-time offer, by networking with a class of '92 Yale College grad. And it was fantastic. I feel like even folks from all across the university are really eager and willing to engage with other folks, from different schools, and that was another thing that I'm again really grateful for.
Great, thank you. So let's take a few questions from our audience. I'll answer a few very quick questions that are related to specific components of the application. Somebody's asking about test scores. Do we require any English language test score, such as the TOEFL or any other test to gauge language proficiency? And the answer is we do not. The only test scores that we require are the GMAT or the GRE. You decide which one you want to take, and that's what you submit to us. We have absolutely no preference for one over the other. Is the application for the Silva Scholars Program different? It isn't. It is the exact same application that all of our full-time MBA candidates fill out. I suppose there are two minor peculiarities specific to the Silva Scholar application. One is the letters of recommendation. As I mentioned, of course, Silva Scholars come with no full-time work experience. So instead of 2 professional letters of recommendation, we require that you submit 1 professional and 1 academic, meaning that the professional one should come from a manager, supervisor, someone who has overseen your work, during an internship, could be even an on-campus job, and an academic one that should come from a professor, mentor, advisor, somebody that can actually speak to your how you've performed as a student. So speak to your more to your academic profile. Are there any course requirements? There aren't. I just talked about the variety of majors that we welcome into the Silva Scholars Program every year. We do not have any course requirements. We do not expect to see any particular courses on anyone's transcript. But one expectation that we do have of everyone is that they demonstrate quantitative preparedness. Obviously, the first year of the program, the core curriculum is quite rigorous. We do expect candidates to demonstrate that they're well prepared for the rigor of that curriculum. So it's okay if you come from a humanities major. We have welcomed students from art history, sociology, etc. Into the program. Again, we have to see evidence of quantitative skills either through test score, work experiences, courses you've taken, anything like that. I think this one is for the panelists. I just mentioned the core curriculum, which is quite unique, right, with the organizational perspective courses. So can you talk a little bit about how it's prepared you, maybe specifically for your extended internship, and for the alumni even perhaps beyond that, how you've drawn on that model, as well as maybe the raw cases or anything else you want to mention that was part of that first year training.
Yeah, I can probably speak to that. And this is coming from someone who had a very traditional finance background. Not that I didn't love that, but the undergrad level, I think it's very much focused on sort of, I hate to say it, but somewhat of an extension of high school, in that it's very much like learn this and, you know, put it back down on a piece of paper in the exact way that I taught it to you. Whereas the first year at Yale was much more at the manager level, was much more of a holistic view of a company. And I found that that was incredibly helpful, not just because they sort of cut away all the things that didn't really matter. So for example, you know, even when we were in our, you know, investing class, they were talking about how, you know, here's all the theories and here's why they may or may not work in certain situations. So I did feel like it was much more practical. The raw cases, those were rough on occasion, to be honest. Anytime that we would get a raw case, it would go into the group chat of like, y'all just be ready, it's a raw case. And it was sort of like, you know, a warning to everyone, but it was more accurate. So, I mean, just realistically in life, no one is going to hand you a 25-page piece of, you know, note workbook that has all of the information that you need and none of the information that you don't. And so, like, I remember, I think the raw case I remember the most was on Ant Financial from China. And it was just a data dump of epic proportions. I mean, like, you could have spent a week going through this much information. And of course you had, I think we had 3 days maybe to go through it or something like that. And, you know, I did think it was extremely helpful to go through that process, because you learned really quickly, okay, how do I get through this much information in a practical manner so that it actually becomes useful? And when you find yourself in particular at the manager level in companies, that is your day-to-day process. Like, what's important, what's not, figure it out and prioritize accordingly. And have especially found that, you know, in my last role, as well as the role I'm in right now, when I was leading a team and am still leading a team of, you know, currently it's over 20 people, that, you know, there is always going to be too much information. And if I, as the team leader, cannot figure that out and figure it out quickly, my team has to deal with that. And so, you know, that I think is the biggest life skill that I think was huge from that first year.
Great, thank you.
I think for me, the in-class knowledge has helped me in unexpected ways, like ways unexpected to when I was taking the courses. I think one thing about being a Silver Scholar is you might find that your career goals changing a lot over the course of these few years, because it's really an experience that accelerates your growth. You might you know, expect to do one thing when you come in, but as you take courses, meet people, try different internships, you'll find your idea about what's the best fit for you change. And that's definitely happened for me. So my first year, I did a market development and insights internship at IBM, and then I did a fall internship as a product manager, and then I did a spring internship as a product analyst. And then at this point, I was looking into my gap year summer internship, and I was thinking about trying product marketing. But like I mentioned, I was an econ major. I have absolutely no background in marketing. The only thing I have to do with marketing is I've taken, you know, one class called customer during our first year curriculum, which is on marketing. So, you know, even though I didn't remember a lot of the details, and when I was taking it, I didn't really see how it was going to be relevant to me. When I was preparing for the product marketing interviews, because I've taken it, it wasn't all, you know, fresh. It wasn't all like new and intimidating. I could pick up a lot of the knowledge really quickly. And, you know, say during the interview, I'm an MBA student, marketing is a core part of our business curriculum, and talk about marketing in a way that shows, you know, basic understanding and past interviews, and also just have a level of credibility on my qualifications, just because we've covered so much ground in our first year. So I think the comprehensiveness of the curriculum is really valuable in ways I didn't even expect at the time.
Okay. A few international students have asked, and perhaps this is more of a question for Akshat, Jinyao, and Johan, if international students in the program find it more challenging to secure internships, jobs, or that extended internship in the United States. Johan, I know that you did both. You worked both in the US and outside of the US during your extended internship. So perhaps you can start. Was it more challenging to go one route as opposed to the other?
For sure. I mean, in general, I wouldn't say there's one right or one wrong way. I mean, I have a lot of calls with people that approach me that are currently at the school as well about what I did in particular and what I found challenging or not. And given my unique situation that I'm not American, but I'm essentially on a visa now, on a work visa. So the thing is, I don't think in the end anything, you could say nothing is possible here in the US or elsewhere, but you just need to position yourself right. And for me, the choice was essentially saying, okay, I want to do this 1 year, and I want to make the most out of it, the most that I can. And the best way for me was to say, okay, if I stay here in the US, there's this typical internship cycle that everybody knows of, that it's essentially a couple months, I believe 2.5, 3 months. That's kind of the usual term of that internship. And after that, what do you do after that? There's only very few programs that I know of that are longer term, where you can say you can actually bridge a year somehow. Because this typical like off-cycle internship doesn't really exist in the US, which makes it challenging to say I take a year off and then I do multiple internships, because that's simply not how US companies are typically set up. So I said, let me just do something else. And for me, as I'm from Germany, like Europe is my home ground essentially. And I know over there that typical concept of saying I only have this structured internship window over the summer, that doesn't really exist. There, it's even an advantage if you come in and say I can do a longer term internship. And I even sold that to my internships over there, saying whatever you need me for, I mean, I can do whatever length you want. And I came in, I think originally saying I want to do a 6-month internship. Then they say, could you maybe do a little bit longer? I was like, sure. I mean, I have the flexibility as part of this program to do even a 7 or 8 month internship. I think I ended up doing eight months then in banking over there, which they said they would have loved to even have me longer, because I mean, for them, it's great. They have a person that they can train that basically after like a couple months is almost a full-time person. But it's somebody that just comes in and supports the team and gets up to speed really quickly. So for them, that's a huge advantage as an employer. And I think leveraging that was actually a win-win situation for both, for my employer and for myself, because I got to do what I wanted to do for a very extended period of time, and got to mitigate that consideration that I had here in the US with essentially internships only being over the summer. And really, they were happy that I was there, and that gave me a bunch of opportunities following from that on, because I also had the chance to prove myself over an extended period of time, which is something very important as well that you have to consider. Given here, after 2 months, forming an opinion on a candidate is not the easiest all the time, but like over there, these guys had 8 months to evaluate me and say, this guy is really somebody who we like. And they loved me a lot. So they gave me a bunch of opportunities following that, including kind of a transfer to the US, other opportunities with other firms that just was introductions basically, and said, we have this guy who did a great job for a long time. You can basically take this guy because we endorsed everything that he does. So for me, that was the game changer. I'm not saying that's like the way how to do it, but that was an advantage that I realized actually you can leverage. And I've seen that with other folks too that did that in Asia. kind of similar approaches, where there's a lot more receptiveness to kind of longer term internships. So it's something definitely to consider if you want to go down that route of saying like, let me do 1 or 2 longer internships and not just try to do something that's shorter but staggered.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I can kind of add to that as well. I think, whether it's more difficult as an international student kind of depends on what you're recruiting for, if that makes sense. So just for context, I'm currently at a mid-market private equity firm, which is based in New York. I'm working remotely from India. And, what I noticed was that for a lot of the more structured, the bigger firms with the more structured recruiting processes, there are some firms which may not even recruit international students on a particular year. And that kind of changes year to year. There's nothing that, you can sort of do on that front. But for a lot of the smaller firms, being an international student can actually be to some extent an advantage, like Johan said, because you have a year of CPT, and just to be able to go in and do a longer term internship, which is what I'm currently doing, can be really an advantage because, you don't essentially have to go in full time just yet. They do get some time to evaluate you and see whether they like you, and I think whether you like them, and just to figure out that fit. And more importantly, just going into an off-cycle, sort of a longer-term internship, a lot of the smaller firms who are doing really well would actually be kind of very pro that. If you kind of want to go for a more structured, bigger firm, it can be a little bit more difficult. But for some of the startups and the smaller firms, they can actually be very, very, very for it, and it can actually be a pretty easy process from that front.
Yeah, and I can sort of add, obviously I'm not the international student, so I, can't speak to the challenges that brings, and definitely know that there's that element. But something I would really, really encourage everyone to do is to be really open to a non-traditional path. I think that with this program, the biggest advantage it has is that flexibility. And I think that a lot of people, when they're looking into it, they don't actually understand how amazing an opportunity that is. You basically have this opportunity to try anything that you want. And if it doesn't work, who cares? I mean, you're just going back to school and you're going back to Yale. I mean, what a pity. And so you have this opportunity to take a lot more risk in your career very early than you otherwise might be comfortable with or might be able to. There's always situations that, financial, family, whatever they may be, that may prevent you from doing that. You don't have to that same level of restraints in this program. And so like in my example, I did go for the traditional firm in my first year. I was with Deloitte Consulting. Frankly speaking, the only reason they gave me that role is because I had a partner who was actually married to a Silver Scholar who really wanted to make it work. And that was it. And actually, I think that same year, Deloitte didn't recruit any other Silver Scholars because they just didn't know how to make it work. And they didn't have sort of the capital that I had within the company. So the larger companies are always going to have a bit of a challenge trying to get you into like a 1-year internship. It's a lot more flexible if you're willing to work for them for like maybe 2 years and be a little more flexible. But the opportunities you can have when you're flexible, I do think people underestimate. And to give an example, how I ended up at Citi, and just for some reference on that job, I was a vice president. And in order to get that job, the actual requirements were 7 years of experience, having completed your MBA and having completed a 2-year rotational program. I had 1.5 years of experience when they offered me that job. And how I got it though, was I had basically put my name in the hat for some contract roles, which a lot of people, they don't want to look at contract roles because they're like, that, and yeah, they can definitely be bad. But I had this contract role that sounded really cool. And it turns out the person that was hiring was Citi, and they wanted me to support 2 product launches. A week later, my manager, for personal reasons, decided to leave the company, and I got his job. So it was a lot of luck and a lot of chance, but being open to that non-traditional structure put me in front of people that otherwise wouldn't have, really given me a chance, and gave me that amazing opportunity because I was open to that non-traditional structure. And so I think the startup world is great. And I know Daniel can probably speak more to that. I think the startup world is a great place to look, but also, in other ways to work for larger companies. So looking at contract roles, or looking at just, like they were saying, approaching some of these smaller companies and making an opportunity for yourself, and basically showing how you can be of value and being really flexible. So I would absolutely encourage everyone that you always have the jobs that are sort of posted online, and that's a really great source of places to look, but don't underestimate the opportunities that are not as advertised, that are more you know, unusual, or opportunities that you just make yourself. I mean, if you can get a meeting with the CEO, that's always a great way to see if there could be some opportunities. So like make your own opportunities, I would say. And I think you'd be really impressed with some of the Silver Scholars who I won't mention on this call, but I know some of the Silver Scholars who have done that, and they've done very, very well after doing so.
Thank you, Hannah. Actually, you reminded me of a very specific case of a Silva Scholar being very passionate about a particular industry, sustainability, very passionate about a particular company, and essentially writing his own job description. And because Yale has a fantastic relationship with that company, he was, you know, able to propose that as his role. They approved it, and that's where he ended up for his extended internship. So, which is why this is a good time to really emphasize how important it is for you to convey in your application that you have an interest in something, a passion for something. That has to come very clearly through your application, right? This is what the Silva Scholars Committee is looking for. Because people that have worked for a while, they've had time to kind of figure out if they like something, if they don't like it, if they want to advance in their current career or pivot into something else. But as college seniors, we already expect you to be at that point where you can say, this is the road I want to take. This is what I'm passionate about. So make sure that you clearly communicate that in your application, in your candidacy. So I'll answer a few more quick admissions related questions. There's a question about how many Silva Scholars we admit every year. So the incoming class that begins the program every fall is about 350 students. And Silva Scholars are around 5% of that total MBA population. But it isn't a set number. We don't have a specific number of Silva Scholar seats in the MBA class, okay? It just works out to about 20, 25 students every year, but we're open to taking more. Everything depends on the strength of the pool, right? So because the program is not capped, you're welcome to submit an application in any of the 3 application rounds, okay? Your chances of admission statistically will be the same, as well as your chances of receiving a scholarship. Many people I see in the Q&A actually inquired about funding, scholarships, financial aid, so let me say a few words about that as well. All of our scholarships are merit-based. So essentially, it's about the application that you submit, your academic profile, your resume, your letters of recommendation. Everything is evaluated by the Director of Financial Aid to make a decision about awarding scholarship money. More than a third of our students receive some type of a scholarship. The minimum amount is $20,000, $10,000 towards your MBA per year. And the maximum is full tuition. I also wanted to mention that we have a very generous loan forgiveness program. For those of you that take on a loan through us, we work with 2 providers and decide to go into public sector work after graduation, meaning government, nonprofit, multilaterals. If you enter the public sector upon graduation from the MBA program, we forgive 100% of your loan. So think of that as an option. The program is actually good for 10 years after graduation, which means that during that time, you can come in and out of the loan forgiveness program. So we're kind of at an end, although I see we have more questions. I want to assure everyone that we'll send you a recording of the session as well as our contact information if you'd like to follow up with us with additional questions that we weren't able to get to today. But before we end, I would like to ask each one of the panelists if they can give a quick word of advice to those that are currently working on their applications, they're thinking about applying to the program in the spring. What advice do you have? What do you wish you had known when you were applying? Any words of advice would be appreciated.
I guess I can go. I can start off. So the thing that I wish I knew more about when I first started was how much more time I should have spent on developing my personal narrative. I think I was so focused on making sure that when I sat for my standardized tests, I did really well. When I continued working well on my academics and so forth, and preparing for any additional courses like accounting or statistics, which I hadn't taken in a really long time. But I think for me, what was perhaps most rewarding, both through the process of just getting an MBA, but also working on my application, was working on my personal narrative. I think I hadn't done that since I applied to undergrad, and it was meaningful to kind of help me shape and understand, why really did I want my MBA, and what was sort of my both near and longer term goals. And I think I spent some amount of time doing that, but I think there's always more opportunity for introspection.
Thank you.
I think one thing that I would add is really in kind of how you present yourself during the application process and everything that you write up. Basically, I would say it's really about being honest, obviously on the one side, but it's also being on the other side. I think Maria touched on that really quickly. It's really about showing that you know what you want, that you have some sort of an idea of what you can do using this MBA and where you can get. Because I speak to a lot of people that come from Germany, and they ask me, so how do we do this, and what can we do there, and what do we have to say, basically. And I was saying, I mean, you have to know what you want to do, and that it has to be credible, obviously, and it can only be credible if you really know how you want to use this program to advance yourself. And if you can carve that out in whatever you write up and in the interviews, I would say that's kind of the biggest part. Because if you're not convinced into the value that an MBA program or Yale brings to you in particular, then you can't really tell the story around kind of what's your plan and what's your goal. So that would be my advice. Just really, and I think it backs up on what Dan said. It's really like your personal story. Like, where do you want to get to, and why do you need this program to get you there?
Thank you. Jinyao?
Yeah, I think two pieces of advice I would have. One is I resonate with what people have said, to come up with a comprehensive story. And what I mean by the story is, I think the mistake a lot of people like to make is just to say, I've done A, B, C, I'm really smart, I'm really hardworking, I've done great things, accept me. But I think whenever you interview, you really need to connect the dots for the interviewers. Whenever you're applying to anything, you need to show them, like, you've done these things, but what have those things told you about where you want to go in the future, and how SOM fits into that picture. I encourage you to do a lot of research, so you can highlight any courses, club activities, any resources from the wider Yale community that you perceive can really help you get to where you are, from where you are to where you want to go. And also talk about how you can contribute as a Silver Scholar. So I encourage you to carve out that really comprehensive story, so that whoever's reading your application can just very easily consume it, as opposed to having to connect the dots themselves. The second thing I want to highlight is just to think about any of your past club activities, leadership experiences, academic projects, whatever, that really highlight you as someone who's proactive and constantly challenge yourself to go outside of your comfort zone, and someone who's driven and ambitious even in situations of uncertainty. I think you might have realized from what we've shared about our Silver Scholar experiences that a lot of times it's kind of uncertain. Like, you can do a lot with this program, there's no defined path, but because of that, sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes you have to think really deep about where you want to go, and be very proactive with reaching out to Silver Scholar alums. And it's if you went to a really good college and you've always been a good student, it's not the same. This requires you to really lead your own life and carve out a path for yourself. So if you can highlight any experience that illustrate that you can be that kind of a person, I think that would be very convincing.
Thank you so much. Akshat?
Yeah, I think, my biggest piece of advice, and I'm going to kind of echo what all three of them said, is just figure out what it is that you want to do and why you want to do that. A way I like to put it is a lot of people, when they ask me, how do I get into business school? I think the question you should ask is, what should I do once I do get into business school? Because that's the most important thing, just figuring out, why it is that you want to go there and what it is that you want to do. Those are two important parts of your story that you really just need to have in place. And one thing I kind of wish I knew before applying, and this is specifically for any Indians watching, is carry a coat with you, because New Haven gets so cold. You would not imagine it. I mean, that was the biggest cultural shock for me, was just how cold it gets. And yeah, that's just something I need to flag before anyone, steps out.
Thank you, Akshat. Last but not least, Hannah.
Yeah, I definitely think everything that's been said is totally true. I think in particular, this program, I mean, it is different. It is a different program. And the people who, at least from what I've seen, who really, really succeed in this program are those who are very proactive and will really take control of their own careers. And so when you're applying, you need to show that that is the type of person you are, because this isn't undergrad. This is the MBA level at a very, well-respected school. And there are an incredible amount of opportunities if you go out and reach for them. You're not a traditional MBA student, and you will have to deal with that, but that actually opens you up to even more opportunities. But you do need to be the kind of person who can really, really go for that and really is going to thrive in that type of environment, which is less certain, but has more upside in my mind. So I think just reflecting that, I think, would be good. And also would definitely like to sort of say that I do think there is a tendency coming from undergrad, and I had this tendency for sure to focus too much on test scores, and saying, like, if I don't get, whatever on the GMAT or the GRE, like, I'll never get in. And I'm just going to go ahead and tell everyone, and Maria, maybe you remember, my math score was not good on the GMAT. I don't know if Maria remembers what it was, but it was not stellar.
I do, but thank you for bringing this up, because you're not a score to us, okay? Your application is not just a standardized test score, right? We do look at the entire application, the person, the professional. We look at everything, all parts of the application before we make a decision about admission.
Yeah, so just feel comforted that there are people who get in who don't have stellar scores, and then if it makes everyone feel even better, I took it twice and it got worse on the second one. So that was fun. But yeah, so I would say it's much more about the story and, like, who you're going to be and why you want to go there, and be a part of the community. I think that's the real big focus.
Great. I think that's a great and very optimistic note to end on. I'd like to thank all the panelists. And again, you'll receive our contact information in an email in a couple of days. Thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best, and we hope to see you on campus sometime.